Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Something Comes Along podcast, where we discuss life's changing circumstances and how people navigate and cope with those changes. Today, we're going to try something a little bit different to previous episodes. We're going to talk about leadership and everything that goes with it. And by leadership, I don't mean being the group admin for a WhatsApp group. I mean big responsibility for a firm, its reputation and its people. And both my guests today have such big responsibility. So let me introduce them. Firstly, I'm joined by Rachael Heenan, who is the senior partner of Capsticks, the law firm. Hello, Rachael. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining the podcast. Can I ask you, just by way of starting, how long have you been in post as senior partner, and a little bit about Capsticks, maybe?
Yeah, so I've been a senior partner for 9 years. It's an elected position. I'm in my third term, so I've got another 3 years, I think, by calculation. Capsticks is a firm that works in the UK, only works with organisations that makes a difference. It's very well known for its work in the health sector and increasingly well known for its work in housing, local government and emergency services and regulatory.
Thank you very much. And my second guest, now, if you've been living in a cave without Wi-Fi for a few years, you might still have seen this person on LinkedIn. It is William Peake, who is a global managing partner of Harneys. Welcome, William.
Gary, thank you very much. I'm a pollution on LinkedIn, so thank you for going easy on me.
And same question to you. How long have you been in post in the firm?
Yeah, sure. So I have just started my second term, which is a 3-year term. I completed my first term end of last year. It's also an elected position, and Harneys itself is a global international offshore firm. We have offices all over the world, from Singapore, Shanghai, Luxembourg, Bermuda, BVI, Cayman, etc., etc., etc. So I've offended every single office that I haven't listed there. What a strong start to a leadership podcast.
Thank you. And Rachael, starting with yourself, going back to when you started your first term, is it a role that you kind of wanted? And what happened before and when you took on the post, by way of preparation, coaching, training, advice? Was there any of that knocking around?
It was definitely a role I wanted. When I first started as a lawyer, I started as a barrister, I didn't have a clue what the senior partner did. But every time I got promotion, I thought, I want to go up and I want to go up. And there was something about leading something, being responsible for something. And I'd love to say that I had loads of coaching and I read the handbook, and I did the module at law school, but I had absolutely no coaching at all, no preparation for it. And I think that's probably true of a lot of these roles. I had a lot of support and a lot of, a good circle around me, but no, nothing. And probably in hindsight might have helped a little bit. Subsequently, though, I think, and I wonder if William will say the same thing, a year or two in, you thought, I don't really know what I'm doing this job. Maybe I should get some coaching. And then I've had some really good coaches and support since then.
William?
Yeah, so I, again, very similar to Rachael, I definitely didn't have a clear ambition that this is what I wanted to do, but I'd always naturally drifted towards leading teams and leading big ticket items of litigation, where I was managing lots and lots of people. And I started to recognize that good lawyers are dime a dozen. They're everywhere you turn, but that if you are able to introduce an element of EQ and an element of curiosity around how people actually work, that will fuel good leadership habits. And I always think a good leader is a really good observer as well. And on the coaching piece, no, I don't have a coach, but I do have a team of really, really good people around me. And every day I will speak to our CFO, Mary Boltwood, our Chief of Staff, Gareth Russell, and our Chief People Officer, Holly Hurst. So I suspect I'm getting free therapy of all three of those.
And one kind of observation thing I've heard over the years, and I'm on my way to asking whether it's a lonely role, particularly at the start, but the whole model is, you're suddenly without any pre-advised training modules, you're landing in a role which is so diverse and wide. All of a sudden, the buck stops with you, and you're meant to know everything. And what do you do if you don't know everything? Who do you ask? So, was that your experience, and is it a lonely role?
I don't think it is. And there's certainly moments where you have to make a decision and people want you to make the difficult decision so they don't have to. So there's that element of you're not going to be the one that's invited to the pub, and I can live with that. But I think there's something about understanding what the role is, and I suspect our roles are different because every firm is different. So I'm senior partner, I'm external facing. It's sort of, we talk about shop window, I talk about clients, I talk about culture and recruiting people. But actually, it's not about the title. It's not about me being a leader. It's about influencing and creating behaviors. But there's so much stuff goes on behind the scenes, getting people into the right position, helping people win. And I think that's really misunderstood, particularly in this profession. They think, oh, you get the title and you're in charge of everything. But actually, if you do it right, you're helping everyone else create the right conditions and deliver what they need to deliver. So there was a real sort of wake up call for me, was actually, this isn't the job I signed up for, but actually it's a much better job as a result of it. So the pressure is off. But again, like William, the joy in this job is the people that you work with, that you surround yourself with in the senior management team. I mean, I've talked before about Martin Hamilton, who's our outgoing managing partner, and Neil, who's our Q, and Vicky, who's our incoming managing partner. And that, the fact that you work together as a team, none of us want each other's jobs. We find something to laugh about every day, but also take things very, very seriously. That is such a rewarding role to have.
Lovely to hear. William?
Yeah, I suppose that for me, well, first, nobody ever invited me to the pub, so that was not that was an easy one for me to steer clear of. But I've definitely learned that you lead as a collective. You don't lead as an individual. And my management style was always drifting people into a position and never telling them to stand there and do this and wait for that. And sometimes I know that frustrates some of my partners, because sometimes they're like, no, we'd like you to be clearer, or we'd like you to, shut this down, and et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, well, I can't do that. But the problem is that I don't think people will follow that style of leadership. And you have to develop gears as well. You can't just be a flat track bully, and you need to adopt a different approach to different scenarios. Because if you have no gears, you're predictable. And then you're easy to, you're very easy to trump and to trick if you're predictable. So you need to be able to take a much more kind of, bespoke approach to dealing with each of the issues. But the biggest challenge for me when I took it over was that I've always had a fairly fragile ego, and I've always been susceptible to criticism. And I realized that I was taking absolute pelters in the job, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I didn't sign up for this. I'd signed up for, obsequious sycophants and people being really nice to me 24/7. And I really, that was without a doubt the hardest learning curve for me. And I was very lucky that my parents, my dad was a lawyer. He was a senior partner in a law firm in Belfast, and my mum ran a very successful fashion business, and I got way more from my mum on leadership and bringing people along, and the power of kindness and courtesy and manners and listening and being observant and all that good stuff. But I remember saying to my mum that I was really struggling, that nobody was saying thanks to me for all my Herculean efforts, and she absolutely cracked up laughing. She thought this was one of the funniest things she'd ever heard. She was like, "What did you expect, William? That is, your job is to make decisions. Your job is to move things forward. You're not doing this for thanks. You're doing this for the salary you receive. It's an elected position." Or "gurn it up," as they say in Northern Ireland. That was the G-force was real for me in managing my fragile ego and my insecurities and trying to be successful in the role.
But that's why it's so important that the team around you, who also have to make tough decisions, are stand alongside you as
Totally.
well. Yeah. And
Totally.
it's interesting what you said about the gears. Because actually, people say, I just want you to sort this out. But things are never black and white, are they? So that you end up sort of mediating and trying to work out the right thing for the business.
And what I find as well quite interesting is that as a litigation lawyer, I was very much, when a client came to me with a problem, it was, I'm going to sort this out. I'm going to resolve it. Just give it to me. Take it away. You don't need to worry about this ever. Whereas actually, when you're dealing with a very senior individual who's putting something on your desk, it's not actually for you just to take it and sort it out. It's now you're in this together and we're going to sort this out together. And I'm going to seek your permission to have conversations with people. Because I did used to go off like, like a bull in a china shop with, I'm going to do this and I'm going to sort this out. And don't worry, I'm here to absorb all your anxiety. I'm here to take it on my shoulders. I'm like, that's just absolute nonsense, because that person who's brought you the problem, first of all, they're never giving you the full deck of cards. And the greatest error you can make is assuming that the person that comes to you first is telling you the truth, because the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. And it's, as Rachael says, it is never, ever black and white. And it's more shades of grey than sit on the top of my head. So
and that's why the observation is so important.
I was going to ask you what you learned about yourself over the last few years. What surprised you about how you've adapted in role?
I think I wish I'd learned more about myself before coming into the role rather than doing it on the job. I think it's that bit about, as lawyers, we've got a certain skill set and it's not necessarily the right skill set for a management or leadership role. I think I wish I knew that a bit more. I think the coaching has certainly helped bring out your confidence and the strengths, but also an ability to say, actually, I'm not particularly good at this, but I know someone who is. I think that's my reflection.
Yeah, I never had a problem with admitting that I was not good at something. But I also realized that I suppose I knew I was good in a room with clients, and I knew that I was good at making that kind of big impact whereby they would walk away and they would say, whoa, he really knows what he's talking about. The problem is that when you're leading, you've got these clients, your clients are now your stakeholders, your partners, every person in the business, but they're dealing with you 24/7. So you can't make an impact because they're tired of your voice already. And that was the bit that's the bit that I always think about leadership, is that you have a bag of parlor tricks and eventually people start working them out. And eventually people start just growing tired of the voice in the room and the approach. And I often think about that in private practice, it was so much easier dealing with clients than it was dealing with your stakeholders. And again, the only management book I've ever kind of read is Mike Brearley's The Art of Captaincy, and I love Brearley. I've read every single word he's written, and I've listened to everything he's done, and I find it so interesting about, as a psychoanalyst, that the first thing you do to train as a psychoanalyst is you're psychoanalyzed for 3 years. So when Rachael makes that point, or I wish I knew more about myself before I took on the role, that is the most eloquent description for me of what I wish I had done before I became. I didn't realize I was so sensitive, and I didn't realize that my ego was quite that fragile, actually. And that was a big eye opener for me.
I think there is something about being quiet, learning to be quiet, because as lawyers and as good lawyers with good client following, that's how you get into these positions. You're used to being the voice the whole time, but actually I no longer feel like I have to be the loudest voice in the room. And actually the quietness and the calmness and the observation brings something else to the discussion.
And the best, I mean, it's really interesting that I find that the most authoritative figure in a room, you start to recognize that they never have to clear their throat or a hem or make some big body language posture move to get the next thing, to get the mic. The mic naturally moves towards them. And I think you get that via silence and being holding that kind of tension on a point in a room allows that to occur. And again, it all goes, for me, a lot of this goes back to that observation point, that you know your partner so well that you know when they're going to want to come in on something. You know when they're WhatsApping under the table to another partner of theirs and saying, why is he saying this? Why is he not doing that? Et cetera, et cetera. And they often think that they are doing this like in some sort of Harry Houdini style where nobody can see them. I mean, they're terrible at it. And, or the more intense look, the face on the Zoom call, the more poison I know they're sending on the WhatsApp under the screen. And that for me, again, it's all about observations.
You mentioned 24/7 before. I was going to ask you both, are you able to switch off in a job like you have got? I mean, are you allowed to switch off? I mean, and how do you switch off?
I'm allowed to switch off, but that's not how I'm geared. So there's different sort of gradients. So whilst I'll go on holiday, I will still check my emails because I've tried coming back and not looking at them, and that's a nightmare, and that just doesn't work for me. That's too stressful. But people are very respectful of my time, so it's my choice as to whether or not I dip in and out. I'm much better if I can come back to work thinking, oh, everything's under control.
And Rachel, before I ask William, before you went into the job, was that a worry that, I'll never have a moment to myself if I take this on?
That's I'm thrive at sort of full pelt. It's either full pelt or full horizontal. I can't do anything in between. But you also, it's that bit about learning about yourself. You learn, after a morning of Teams calls, got to take yourself out for a walk.
Yeah.
Got to, no noise, no headphones or anything like that. Just go and walk the dog, go for a cup of tea, something like that. You learn how to manage yourself because no one else is going to do it for you.
Yeah, totally. Like before I did this role, my phone was sellotaped to my forehead. It's been exactly the same since I took on the role as well. But I do reflect a lot on, I'm holding a big cultural torch, and I need to be sincere in my messaging around work-life balance. And I know that people will say, you have no work-life balance at all. And we can all see that really, really clearly in how you perform. You are always on. But I suppose that I'm the same as Rachel, that I will, I'll go for a run every morning. I'll do that without my phone, and I'll take an hour whereby I'll go for a run, I'll have a coffee, and I don't have anything around me, and I don't have anything to distract me. But it's a huge burden on my family as well. And I know my wife sees a version of me that, although she has, I know this because she's articulated it to me very clearly. She's like, William, I'd love them to see this on LinkedIn. I'd love them to see the man having, a nervous breakdown because he's stood on a Lego brick. Where's your five? Yeah, exactly. Like 5 business ways to build resilience from standing on Lego. It's like, so I'm very conscious that I think the cast of characters around you have to bear a really big burden on you performing in your role, and be it internally or in your family life. And I'm becoming acutely aware of that. But I do think that when it comes to, are you always on? I think, yeah, I am, because they elected me to be always on. And if a catastrophe happens in our business and I'm on holidays, I do not want, I trust the people who are dealing with it, but I trust their judgment to get on the bloody phone to me immediately. And look, there's upsides to this. I mean, I'm very, very conscious that I'm really conscious that I'm well paid. I'm really conscious that I'm in a very, very privileged position in my life because of how I've worked. And I don't mean that in that chintzy vulnerability, humbled and privileged LinkedIn way. I've made huge sacrifices to get me to this point now. And I'm relatively young enough and healthy enough to operate at this level. But you can only sprint for so long. And I don't intend in 20 years' time to be sitting here talking about how do I manage my day and all that kind of stuff. That's just ridiculous. And other people have to have an opportunity to do it. I think that's a really, really healthy thing for a business.
On the subject of extension of burnout and mental health and the positions you hold, I mean, I think there's more news now, and I assume therefore there's more instances of kind of breakdowns in senior lawyers, senior business services professionals, suicide. I mean, how worried are you about it, and what can you do in your roles to try and to mitigate the chances of it happening at your firms?
Very worried is the answer. I myself had breakdown, burnout, whatever, a couple of years ago, and I talk very openly about it. And I hope that helps people because they feel it can happen to anybody. And I've worked out what works for me. I think life is tough. It's not just law firm life. Life is tough for people, and actually, there's always a combination of things. So whatever we can do to support people and be as kind and as flexible and as understanding as we can be is the most that we can do. But we can't fix everything as well. I think that is reality. And there is a responsibility on people to, with our help and with their families' help, seek help for themselves. But yeah, it's probably one of the things on the top 3 things I worry about.
And going back when you started your first term, was it a topic of conversation then as much as it is now?
It was at Capsticks. We were one of the first firms to sign up to the Mindful Business Charter. So it was, and it was at the right time when I was having an episode as well. So it was quite timely. But yeah, we talk about it quite a lot. I don't think we've got the answer, if I'm honest. I don't think anyone's got the answer. But having an ability to talk to those that you work with and to offer some support is probably the best we can do at the moment.
I was just trying to work out whether life has got harder, life and work, and therefore there's more instances and it's higher on the agenda, or whether it's now okay to talk about it more. And I can't quite work it out.
I think COVID meant that you brought your life into work more. I think that was part of the trigger. And people, we saw people's kids, we saw people's relationships, their families and things like that. And I think people now, and it's probably the right thing, feel able to talk about it a little bit more. But do we create circumstances that create even more pressure on people? Absolutely. And sometimes stress is a good thing. Do we create the right circumstances? No, I'm not convinced we do all the time, but I don't know what the answer is. And if anyone's got the answer.
I actually do have
Well,
the
I
answer.
thought you would.
Of course I do. Of course I do not. But I think they're just picking that thread of what Rachael says is that I think what you need to be laser focused on is stripping out gratuitous unkindness in a business, because there is so much organic unkindness that actually going out of your way to be that person is a problem. We have had narcissistic, self-indulgent bullies in Harneys. They were stripped out of the business. a few years ago. It was more than a couple before people get their timelines out to try and work out who I'm talking about. But they were they were but they were people who we invited the vampires in. We knew what they were doing, and we were totally fine with it because their numbers looked okay. And that the blast radius of that is huge because everybody goes, that's what they're prepared to accept. That's the standard. And I think that the world, life isn't fair. And I think that once I got my head around that, it really helped me, and that there are going to be peaks and there are going to be troughs, and you've got to know that nothing is permanent, and this too shall pass. But I have really, from my own kind of personal perspective, the things that I've had to be so disciplined in a way that I was never disciplined in my 30s, whereby I would never think twice about going for pints on a Tuesday night with my mates. I would never think twice about just staying out later, eating absolute crap, all of that good stuff. Thinking I'll go for a run tomorrow. That'll be fine. Or that I can. And I used to be a big fan of going for a few pints and then getting out for a run the next morning, and that would be my reset because I knew I could do it. And then and for me, it was like the wheels I'm 47 now, and the wheels fell off when I was like 42, 43. I just was like, oh my goodness, I've no bounce back ability here whatsoever. So I needed to be really disciplined about diet, about alcohol intake, and about the news that I was exposing myself to as well, and stopping myself going into kind of these toxic rabbit holes. And that has helped me a lot. Now, of course, I have to be aware of everything that's going on, but like I don't have like Instagram, or I don't have the only social media I have is LinkedIn. Thank God, says you, Gary. But you don't need to agree so quickly with that. But that is I don't want to see what I don't really care what other people are up to, because I do really believe that lots of people are just projecting a life that
it doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist, and they're not leading. And it was really funny, actually. There's this troll on Roll on Friday, somebody who has the marker. What is it? It's something. It's a cartoon dog. Is it Dick Dastardly, Muttley or something? And this guy, and I don't know why I'm saying it is a guy. I suspect it is. But like his big, he just goes off in these rants about my LinkedIn about, he says he does all these things, he doesn't do them, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
I know, it's just, no. So it's in this kind of like, one of my mates gleefully pointed this out to me recently. He thought it was very funny. But I thought it was quite interesting that if anything, I would, like, if I go with my family, I will stay in a nice hotel, right? Like, that's just because that's what I will do, because I feel like I've worked hard enough, blah, blah, blah. My wife works hard enough, but we will stay in a nice hotel. Like, the last thing I'm ever going to do is post a picture of me at a poolside doing that. If anything, what I'm trying to do is show how exhausting international travel is, and how exhausting leadership is, and how you've got to make sacrifices, and how all the glisters isn't gold. And do I want to wake up every morning and go into the cycle of check my inbox, clear, check my WhatsApps, clear, check my Zoom, oh no, there's a message in there that I need to deal with, where I'm up, I'm out of bed, my cortisol has gone through the roof, and I just think leadership I think it's really, really hard. I think it's really hard. And I think that I don't think people talk about that often enough. And I get why they don't, because they don't want to talk about it, because they don't want to say, oh, poor you, blah, blah, blah. But it is a tough gig. I enjoy it. I really enjoy it, but it is a tough thing to do.
I have a very healthy perspective on it because this is the job I've loved the most in my career. But my partner's a policeman, and I can't complain
That's a
about
tough
anything.
job.
I cannot complain. He's a policeman in Salford, and the stuff that he deals with, um, you know, day in, day out, I have nothing to complain about. And I think sometimes lawyers in our sort of little protected environment, and he's like, "Oh dear, did Pret not have the soup you wanted today?" And he's been dragging someone out of a canal. I think, okay,
Yeah.
so that gives me a real balance and real perspective.
And I was going to say, Rachel, also, the cases you work on as a firm,
Yeah.
personally work on, must also give you that frame of reference of, oh my word, there for the grace of God.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, if we can do a little bit to make something a bit better, then I think that's why a lot of people come and work with us. So
Okay. I mean, I've got three more things to ask you. One of them is actually what William's just been speaking about. So I'm not just saying this because you said it, but I was going to ask about, public social media persona and how it helps you personally. And I personally think you both, in very different ways, come across as very human, and it's quite a progressive, modern, fresh way of leadership that I think, Rachel, you were one of the first people to do it, and Martin, actually, combining firm and work and mingle them a little bit. He was taking it to another level, but the point is, it's progressive and modern, I think. But I was just wondering kind of why you do it and what you get out of it. William, you've partly answered that, I think.
I really miss Twitter. I thought Twitter was great. I thought that was a really good. Part of me wants to be a little bit sick in my mouth when I post, like, oh my God. But actually, I also feel like I've got a responsibility, and I need to be able to show that if you come and work with us, whether as a client or a lawyer or business services, who are you going to be working with? So it's not your true self, because God, no one would want that, but actually just little snippets. And I posted recently about my mum's 80th, because my dad sadly died a couple of months ago. And actually the response, I thought, oh, should I post about it? And I was like, yeah, because actually life happens, doesn't it? And you've got to celebrate. And actually people want to hear the nice stories. They don't just want to hear the latest case update. So thank you to everyone who said happy birthday to my mum.
My dad started wearing sunglasses to mass because he's that popular. But yeah, like, I mean, for me, I think it's exactly the same as Rachel says. You're trying to show a touch of personality that you're going to be working with humans. Now, I know some of the flack that I will get internally is from people saying you're portraying this image of this firm has no problems. And I'm like, I literally am on the record repeatedly as saying we don't get everything right. But if you choose to ignore me saying that, that's totally fine. But I'm also trying to demonstrate that working in a law firm is really hard. It's a tough job. Yes, you're surrounded by smart people, but there are stress levels. And to kind of Rachel's point around, it's all about getting the right level of stress. And, I was a real lastminute.com merchant with some tasks because I needed the pressure of knowing that the deadline was there. Otherwise, I'm just like, do you know what? That's fine, and I had to do a lot of work on myself around that because I was just then creating these massive crunch periods for me. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to talk about law firms are challenging environments with huge rewards around not financial, but around you're working with bright people and you're working with inspiring people. And certainly the work that we do at Harneys is, is very different to Rachel's firm. But what we're trying to do is provide advice to people that allows their businesses to thrive. That's it. And it's really that simple. And I really do believe that every law firm, I think if you're dealing with firms of our caliber, there is an expectation that you will know the answer, that you will know the legal analysis and get it right. But there isn't an expectation that you're somebody who I want to work alongside and somebody who, when you're sitting in a meeting room at midnight on a Wednesday with the stench of takeaway food sitting in the corner and stress levels high, that's the person who you want to be there. And that is the bit that I'm trying to communicate I do try to talk about, kindness and courtesy and compassion. And I am sending that externally, that message, but I'm also sending it internally. And people know that. It's very passive aggressive management of people internally, actually.
I think you, as I said before, I think you both come across as very kind, and you've both said this yourselves. The world needs more of that, and if lots of people do it, and it could be contagious. Two questions to finish, and they're often combined because the first one you've partly answered. I was going to ask you, if you had your time again, what would you do differently before going into such a leadership post? You've part answered that. The second question, which we haven't discussed, is what advice you'd give to a future managing partner or senior partner elect about to go into post or thinking about going into post, with the benefit of your experience.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely get the coaching before I went in, maybe to coach me out of why I went for the job. I think despite what we said, it's the best job in the world. It's a huge privilege. If you thought you would be doing this job when you're at law school, you'd be like, wow, there's no way I could do it. In fact, my friend of mine's an ambassador, and he and I quite often get together and we go, how the hell did we get these jobs? And when we were at bar school, we were rubbish. But actually, it's not about that. And my advice we've got a new managing partner coming in, so I'll share the advice, is just do one good thing in your first year. That's all you need to do. There's a lot of noise, but just do one thing well. And the problem with leadership, particularly in law firms, is you're only as good as your last album. So your first good year is brilliant. It's like, okay, what are we going to do again? So you've always got to keep stuff up your sleeve that you're gonna produce.
Thank you. Brilliant.
Yeah, eating bread is soon forgotten is something that I always revisit. And yeah, I suppose what I would have done in advance is done a bit more work on myself around my kind of insecurity levels. That I think that would have been a very good thing for me to do. But for advice for somebody going into it is make sure you do have a really tight group around you where you can be vulnerable, you can be yourself, and you can admit real, a real honesty. Because if you can't be honest with those people, you are just a busted flush because you're constantly putting up a pretense. So you really need that Praetorian guard around you to help you function. And it's not all on you. It's a collective. And I think a lot of leaders forget that. And that there's a great conversation with Mike Brearley where he was being psychoanalyzed, and he's talking about Middlesex having a terrible run of games. And he's like, oh, and I made this bad decision, and I the fielding was off, and I didn't get any runs, and I brought in the wrong bowling change. And the psychoanalyst leans back and says, Mike, you do realize there's 10 others on the team?
Yeah.
And it really shocked him into, actually, I'm not that important. I have a role to play.
Yeah.
But the collective has a role to play too.
Yeah. And the equity partners are business owners in their own right. There's no hierarchy there. So when we make a decision as a group. Although it might be ultimately the SMT's decision.
Absolutely. That's another podcast, Rachel.
Oh, yeah. It's a series of them.
Well, thank you both very much for joining this podcast today. I appreciate it. And again, thank you for what you do and the kindness you show on LinkedIn. I find it, I've much appreciated.
Well, thank you, Gary. We love your posts.
Yeah.
Particularly about Ian.
Yeah, I'd mirror. Do you know what? I would mirror that right back at you, Gary, because I think that one of the reasons why people don't do and talk about the things that you're talking about is that they're concerned that it's seen as performative and that it's just seen as box ticking. But if nobody does it, nothing happens. And I think there's just such a real sincerity to what you're doing, which breathes such credibility into it. So I would echo what Rachael has said. Thank you for what you're doing.
Appreciate that. I wasn't going to post this podcast if Evan beat Liverpool in a couple of weeks, but I'll isn't that I'll even post it.
We're nailed on to lose. Everybody knows that. That's the bloody problem.
No, thank you both very much, and thank you to everyone for listening or watching this podcast, which has been a Totum Partners production. Thank you very much.